The arrest warrant is sitting on your desk right now. Harlan Whitmore III, County Commissioner, Church Deacon, the man whose grandfather built the courthouse you're sitting in, whose father's name is on the hospital wing 3 blocks away, whose family has run Caldwell County for longer than anyone alive can remember. The warrant is for drug trafficking, conspiracy, 3 counts of obstruction of justice, and 1 count of ordering the death of a federal informant whose body was found in a drainage ditch 8 miles outside of town 6 years ago, a case that was ruled an accidental drowning by the coroner who, as it turns out, has been on the Whitmore payroll for 11 years. You've been sheriff of Caldwell County for 4 years. You grew up here. You went to school with Harlan Whitmore's nephew. You stood at the back of the church every Christmas Eve and watched the Whitmore family sit in the front pew like they owned the building. They do own the building. They donated it in 1987. In about 2 hours, you're going to drive to the Whitmore estate on Garrison Road, and you're going to knock on that door, and you're going to arrest the most powerful man in this county in front of his family. Before that happens, you need to understand what it took to get here. Because 6 months ago, you didn't know any of this. 6 months ago, you thought Caldwell County's drug problem was the same as every other small county's drug problem. A supply chain that originated somewhere else, drifted in through the edges, and was managed by the usual cast of low-level dealers you knew by name and occasionally had to put in a cell for the weekend. 6 months ago, you thought the Whitmores were exactly what they looked like. You were wrong about all of it. It started with a traffic stop. Deputy Carla Reeves, your best deputy, 7 years on the job, the kind of officer who notices things other people don't, pulled over a pickup truck on Route 9 at 11:30 on a Tuesday night. Expired registration, no insurance. Standard stop. The driver, a 24-year-old named Dustin Farr, was nervous in the specific way that people are nervous when they have something in the vehicle they shouldn't. Carla called for the K-9 unit. The dog hid on the bed of the truck, under a false panel welded into the floor, welded in, not just placed there, which meant this was a purpose-built concealment, were 14 individually vacuum-sealed packages of fentanyl. Not pills, not powder mixed with something else. Pure pharmaceutical-grade fentanyl, the kind that doesn't come from a street lab, the kind that comes from a supply chain with access to actual pharmaceutical manufacturing. 14 packages. Enough to kill a small city. Dustin Farr lawyered up within 40 minutes, which was fast enough to tell you someone had already been called before he even got to the station. You didn't know who yet. You filed the charges, held them on a no-bail order, and started pulling the thread. The truck was registered to a logistics company based 3 counties over. The logistics company's corporate records showed a parent company. The parent company's registered agent was a law firm in the state capital. And the law firm, you found this on a Thursday afternoon, sitting at your desk with a cold cup of coffee and the kind of creeping dread that starts in your stomach before your brain is caught up, was the same law firm that handled all of the Whitmore family's business interests. You sat with that for a long time, because understanding what that connection meant and being able to prove what it meant are 2 entirely different things. And because proving it wrong was still possible, law firms have multiple clients, shell companies have legitimate uses, logistics companies move thin. But you also knew Dustin Farr. Not well, but enough. He'd grown up in the county, dropped out of high school, done a short stretch for possession 5 years ago. The kind of kid who ends up in the wrong orbit and stays there because the orbit pays better than anything else available. You went to see him in holding. Without his lawyer, just a conversation, nothing recordable. You know what happens when they find out you talked to me alone? He said. I'm not here to get anything on the record, you said. I just want to know one thing. Is the truck yours? He laughed. Not because it was funny, because the question was so far from the point. Sheriff, he said, that truck has been making that run once a month for 3 years. I'm the 4th driver. The other 3 are all still in the county. You know why? Because nobody who drives for these people ever gets charged for more than the stop. The product disappears from evidence before trial. The witnesses recant, and the driver walks. I'm the 4th driver because the first 3 all walked. You went back to your office and pulled the records on the 3 previous drug arrests involving Route 9 stops in the past 4 years. Dustin Farr was right. 3 arrests. 3 prosecutions that fell apart. In one case, evidence had been logged incorrectly and ruled inadmissible. In another, the primary witness, a gas station attendant who'd seen the exchange, had recanted and moved out of state within 2 weeks of being subpoenaed. In the third, the charges had been quietly dropped after the county prosecutor filed a motion citing insufficient evidentiary foundation. The county prosecutor was Gerald Mays. Gerald Mays had been appointed to his position 9 years ago by the County Commission. The County Commission was chaired by Harlan Whitmore III. You closed your office door. You sat in the dark for a few minutes. Then you did something you'd never done before in 4 years as sheriff. You called the DEA field office directly, bypassing every layer of county and state law enforcement between you and them. Because every layer between you and them ran through Caldwell County's institutional structure, and you no longer trusted that structure. The agent who took your call was named Sandra Okafor. She listened without interrupting for 11 minutes while you laid out everything you had. When you finished, she said, "How long have you been sheriff?" "For years," you said. "And you're just seeing this now?" "I didn't know what I was looking at before," you said. "I do now." There was a pause. Then she said, "Don't arrest Farr yet. Don't charge anyone connected to the logistics company. Don't talk to your prosecutor. Don't talk to your deputies except Reeves, and even then only what she needs to know operationally. Can you do that?" "Yes," you said. "Good. Because if what you're describing is accurate, you just found the end of a supply chain we've been looking for the upstream of for 6 years. And the people at the top of it have survived 3 federal investigations by finding out about them before they could complete." "How did they find out?" you asked. "Someone told them," she said. "Someone inside each investigation. Which means from this point forward, this conversation didn't happen, and you don't exist to anyone in my office except me." "Understood." "Understood," you said. "That was the beginning of 5 months you will never fully be able to explain to anyone who wasn't inside them. You kept showing up to work every morning. You filed routine reports. You attended the county commissioner's monthly meeting, sat in the back row, and watched Harlan Whitmore III run the agenda with the easy confidence of a man who has never once been told no by anyone in a position to mean it. You responded to calls. You managed your department. You did everything a sheriff is supposed to do. And in the margins of all of that, you worked. Agent Okafor's team had been building a case on the supply chain for 6 years, but they'd been working from the outside in, following the product, tracing the distribution network, trying to identify the source. What they'd never had was someone on the inside of the source county who could identify the local infrastructure, who the drivers were, who the lookouts were, which law enforcement personnel were on the payroll, which cases had been deliberately tangled to protect the operation. That's what you provided. Not by going undercover, you were too visible for that, but by pulling records, cross-referencing arrest histories, mapping which cases had collapsed and why, identifying every county employee who had any financial connection to any Whitmore-affiliated entity. What you found took 3 months to fully comprehend. The Whitmore family hadn't started this. Harlan Whitmore III's father, Harlan Jr., had inherited a county that already had a distribution relationship with a regional trafficking network dating back to the 1980s. What Harlan Jr. had done, and what his son had continued and expanded, was formalize it, professionalize it, build a legitimate business infrastructure around it that made the criminal operation nearly impossible to distinguish from the legal one. The logistics company was real. It moved real freight. It also moved, on a rotating schedule of routes and drivers, product from a distribution hub 2 states away into Caldwell County and the 4 surrounding counties. The revenue from the trafficking operation was laundered through the logistics company's receivables, then moved into Whitmore family real estate holdings, then returned as legitimate investment income. You responded to calls. You managed your department. You did everything a sheriff is supposed to do. And in the margins of all of that, you worked. Agent Okafor's team had been building a case on the supply chain for 6 years, but they'd been working from the outside in, following the product, tracing the distribution network, trying to identify the source. What they'd never had was someone on the inside of the source county who could identify the local infrastructure, who the drivers were, who the lookouts were, which law enforcement personnel were on the payroll, which cases had been deliberately tangled to protect the operation. That's what you provided. Not by going undercover, you were too visible for that, but by pulling records, cross-referencing arrest histories, mapping which cases had collapsed and why, identifying every county employee who had any financial connection to any Whitmore-affiliated entity. What you found took 3 months to fully comprehend. The Whitmore family hadn't started this. Harlan Whitmore III's father, Harlan Jr., had inherited a county that already had a distribution relationship with a regional trafficking network dating back to the 1980s. What Harlan Jr. had done, and what his son had continued and expanded, was formalize it, professionalize it, build a legitimate business infrastructure around it that made the criminal operation nearly impossible to distinguish from the legal one. The logistics company was real. It moved real freight. It also moved, on a rotating schedule of routes and drivers, product from a distribution hub 2 states away into Caldwell County and the 4 surrounding counties. The revenue from the trafficking operation was laundered through the logistics company's receivables, then moved into Whitmore Family Real Estate Holdings, then returned as legitimate investment income. You grew up in this county. You went to school here. You stood in the back of that church every Christmas Eve and watched the Whitmore family sit in the front pew. You watched the county's drug problem quietly destroy families for 4 years without understanding what you were actually looking at. You watched 3 prosecutions fall apart and assumed the system was just imperfect rather than deliberately broken. The man who grew up here and became sheriff here and didn't see it for 4 years, he is the one who knocks on that door. Not because it's satisfying, not because of what it will look like or what people will say, but because Caldwell County deserves to watch its own sheriff make this arrest. Because the institution that was corrupted needs to be the institution that corrects itself, or it never actually heals. You pick up the warrant from your desk. You fold it once and put it in your jacket pocket. You take your keys off the hook. In 45 minutes, you'll be on Garrison Road. In an hour, it will be over. 30 years of this county being owned by one family ends this morning, and the man ending it grew up 2 miles from the house he's about to walk up to. Part 2. What happens when you knock on that door, and who answers it? Subscribe, because Part 2 drops this week. And if you'd been that sheriff, would you have knocked on the door yourself, or let the federal agents handle it?